Good morning, Cross Life Church. This last Sunday, I had Pastor Chester and Pastor Patty sit down with me, and we had a discussion on prayer. And we spent about 45 minutes, and I want to just cover a couple of real practical things this morning about prayer. If you have any questions, as we're doing this video, if you'll just put them in the comments, and we will answer them at a later time, or we'll answer them in the comments there. If you have anything, just real practical things, and you are always welcome to get a hold of Pastor Patty or Chester or myself and ask those questions. We are here to help you and equip you to do what you want to do. But good morning. I just wanted to talk to you about some real practical things in prayer. So let's talk about, first of all, when I pray, a lot of times my mind goes 100 miles per hour all the time. I'm constantly thinking of things. And so when I go into spend some time in prayer, it is suddenly just, I think about the weirdest things come up. I think about my grocery list. I think about things I suddenly have to get done. How do you deal with that type of distraction in prayer?
Depending on the prayer time, okay? If you know he's calling you to away for a moment, like I was telling you guys yesterday, there's times early in the morning, but then I've made my day completely available to him. So there's been times where I've literally been washing dishes and he's like, stop, I want you to come pray about this. And I just dry my hands off and go. There's no distraction in that moment when you're called into a time of prayer. For me, there's not. Seriously, it's that supernatural of a thing that there's not. But what I have found for me, okay, is if I've I need to do this or this first thing in the morning, a lot of times I'll just get it done. If it's something that's within my eyesight, that's
just get it knocked out.
I'll just go ahead and knock it out, so that when I go into prayer, it doesn't bug me. Now, having started this journey with 2 small kids in my house and a dog, I learned to shut everybody out. And, some people call that a mom gene. Because you can be sitting in the middle of your family reading a book and your husband's like, hello. How do you do that? Because I've been told men have a harder time doing that.
Sure.
So on a practical level, I would just say knock out what you can. Yeah. What's actually going to distract you.
Yeah.
A lot of times it's just a matter of saying, I'm going to do this.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's out loud. I'm going to do this regardless of whether my flesh or the enemy distracts me.
Yeah.
And then just go. I've always found worship helps.
Yeah, definitely.
The random crazy thoughts that will come through your mind in worship, you pretty much know are always the enemy.
Yeah, it's true. Something I do on a practical level is if it just keeps bugging me, I'll write it down. And that's enough to get it off of my mind that, okay, I remember and I can deal with it later. So I'll take that 2 seconds instead of spending 5 minutes trying to fight it. I'll take the 2 seconds to write it down and be done with it. I think there's also on a spiritual note, things can happen. If something's keep coming up in your mind and you think it's just a distraction or whatever, it may be something God's laying on your heart to pray about.
Right.
That's a real practical thing. There's kind of 2 ways. It can either be a distraction from Satan that he's trying to get you, but you can tell the difference in how it makes you feel, how it affects your spirit.
Right.
But if there's something that's constantly, that might be something that God's, as we talked about yesterday in Sunday, is God is leading you by the Spirit. That may be how he's doing it.
Right.
So.
And a lot of times you'll know the difference. If it's right at first, usually it's just you trying to settle yourself in that place of prayer with him. Yeah. But if it comes up in the middle of it, I would say most definitely pay attention to it. And literally I have just stopped in prayer before and said, Lord, why does this keep coming before me? Are you showing this to me?
That's good.
And if you have an ear to hear him, he's going to talk to you.
Yeah.
He's going to answer that. And if there's nothing but silence, it's like, okay, I'm going to move on.
Yep.
And usually you let it go. And it doesn't bug you anymore. If it comes back around again,
just go with it.
Yeah.
Second thing I want to talk about is posture, physical posture in prayer. You look at the way different people pray. I'm a pacer. I pace. I'm gonna move around, and I've actually tried, after talking to you and kind of going, you've actually kind of spoke to me about, hey, there's times that you change your physical posture. And that's a way of communicating to God. That's a way that he's calling you into different. So I've really kind of tried to be sensitive to that, and not always just be the guy pacing up front. But talk to us a little bit about physical posture in prayer and what that means.
Well, that's kind of been a standing joke between Pastor Chester and the intercessors, because we got into a habit over the years of standing in a circle. And then when Pastor Chester took over and we started talking about intercessory prayer, he's like, yeah, don't do the circle thing. And I'm like, what do you mean? When we do the will? And he's like, no, stand in a circle and pray. And, they always say the anointing comes down from the head, right? So I've made a joke with the intercessors and said, Pastor Chester paces, you should learn to pace. But sometimes for those of us who like being in still places because it helps to still our minds, the walking can distract, some people just have a hard time concentrating and walking at the same time, and I don't mean that ugly, it's just we're all set up different.
Yeah.
Sometimes it makes me tend to chase rabbits. It actually gets my mind moving more. And then there's times where, like, if you're in a circle, like we've seen the last couple of weeks, there is a certain level of unity that it brings into the group, because they're having to focus on what each other is praying.
Yeah.
And usually that will just multiply, and they tend to, I don't want to say feed off each other, but it does add to it.
Yeah, it works together.
It's like a feast on the Lord.
Yeah.
Okay, it does. It works together and it builds. And so that has always helped us. But there's times where if you're in travail, you're on your face.
Yeah.
And we've been taught in the past, on your knees with your head below your heart is a posture of surrendering your mind over your mind, will, and emotions over your heart, which is what the Lord's wanting to do.
Yeah.
Prostrate, face, on the ground.
Well, and that's it's an act of worship. So a lot of times in prayer lately, I've really spent a lot of time just kind of praying, God, like, I submit myself to you, everything and so that physical act, and I'm not a guy that usually lays on the floor, but that physical act of laying on the floor is a way for me to communicate that, because, okay, in humans, nonverbal communication is a majority
right.
of the way we communicate.
Right.
And so I've just kind of thought about that, and talking to you is just that sense of, like, I want to communicate non-verbally with my body. Right. What I'm trying to communicate with my words. Does that make sense?
Right, because a lot of times, unfortunately, as we're learning to peel off layers before the Lord and to become really open and honest with Him, we can say things that are very cliche, but they're head knowledge, okay?
Yeah.
And not heart knowledge. And a lot of times when you prostrate yourself before the Lord, it kind of deals with all of the flesh. And you go straight into, okay, Lord, this is my heart to you, and we're just going to get real. Going to bypass all of the drama that we can do, like a 2-year-old.
That's really easy to do in prayer.
Tantrum,
Well, that's really easy to do in prayer, is to get into rote. It's to get into just a sense of, like, I'm just saying the things that I've always said, and it's almost like you go on autopilot in prayer. Mm-hmm. And I've caught myself doing that and being like, and I literally, I can pray in tongues and think about that grocery list, and I'm going, get your focus, like, bring your mind into alignment with what God's trying to do, and bringing that. And I think some of that's a discipline. Some of that's doing it over time. Some of that's just getting used to that and spending that time and putting that time into doing it. But here's the thing that I kind of want people. I talked on Sunday, and we talked about, like, the importance of praying around people and watching other people praying and being in that atmosphere and that type of thing. It's good to see that, but also God He's teaching you. The Holy Spirit's teaching you, and how you pray is not how we expect everybody to pray.
Right.
The same posture and the same, how I pray. It's finding how you communicate specifically with God.
Right.
Isn't that kind of what we're looking for?
Yes. Yes,
So,
and I completely understand that, because when we started bringing some of the new people in, some of them are like, I can't stand still in a circle, like they're ADD or ADHD, whatever, and they can't do it. They can't focus. And so I purposefully split the group up to get everybody out of their comfort zone at the same time and say, look, Pastor Chester paces, move, walk around, stay in a certain parameter. And it was easier for some people and harder for others.
Yeah, you would see some people gather up, and you'd see some people, even when we're gathered, I'm one of them, when we're gathered, I'm still kind of like in and out, and then just because it's that desire to move. So people are definitely coming up against what they're comfortable with.
Right, and I just think that's a personality thing. Yeah. And He created our personalities. He made each one of us individuals. So when you learn to embrace who you are, who you really are, the way He made you, then you kind of embrace your prayer posture. And realize that you're not doing it to impress another person. Yeah. It's one-on-one between you and Christ, and of course you want to do whatever gets you there the quickest.
Yeah, exactly.
And not for a time constraint, but the desire of not having to muddle through that mess.
That's good.
To go, oh Lord, I'm just like tired of this. This is work. It should never feel like work.
Yeah.
I know Pastor Chester says it is. To me it isn't. I mean, do you leave there sometimes absolutely wore out, wrung out? I mean, I've gotten off the floor before literally soaking wet in sweat from just the physical energy that it takes to travail.
Yeah, yeah.
But would I ever call that work? It, like, to me, that's what makes
What
me
it
come
is. It's
alive.
joy.
Okay.
Yeah,
It literally, like, I feel the most alive when I'm the deepest in prayer.
yeah, yeah.
And I don't know if everybody's going to be that way. So
It's different.
I
Yeah.
put a note on that.
The last thing I want to deal with is emotion in prayer.
Okay.
Okay, it's funny. I didn't tell her what we were talking about ahead of time, so she's doing this off the cuff. But our emotion in prayer, you know, God created us to be emotional. Okay, and I think people can kind of go to one to two directions. Either they try to completely have no emotion in prayer. It's just very. I'm not going to have any emotion. It's all about that. Or they go the other way, where it's so over the top. What do you think of that? Like, do you think that's true? Do you think there's any aspect of that?
I think when they do that, it's fake. Because you're either trying to be too emotional or you're hiding your emotions. And either way, that's not what he wants.
Yeah, it's not being real.
You know, it's like, you've heard Pastor Chester and I talk about this, where I'm like, I know you think I'm an emotional person, but I'm actually very analytical.
Yeah.
When the Lord gives me something, I will think it to death to know that I have exactly what it is that he wants me to do, not to follow some strategy that I've heard in a book or one somebody's come up with, because they kind of irritate me. And so I really want to know this is the plan he's laid out. Having years under my belt of trying strategies and knowing that you can get a good strategy and it may have worked for somebody, but it won't always work for you.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's kind of like taking a shotgun and it's got little pellets in the shell, right? You're going to hit something, but it's so much better to pick up a sniper rifle
Yeah,
and hit it dead on.
Yeah.
And so I've just learned to wait on that from the Lord.
Yeah.
So,
But and it's and I don't know. I think I'm not even gonna say it's a guy-girl thing. I think, but there is a tendency as a guy to not not want to be that emotional type of thing. And odds are I'm not going to. It's gonna be, if it's just a total breakdown with snot in the middle of a service, you're gonna know it's God. But when I'm alone, when it's my own prayer time, I don't care. Whatever God wants to do, one way or the other, that's
right.
fine. You know.
So
that
you
type of
are
thing.
different when you're by yourself.
Definitely. But I would argue with you, we're going to pray differently alone than we would. I'm going to treat Tiffany differently alone when I'm with her. Not treat her, but I'm going to communicate with her differently
Right.
when I'm alone than I'm going to communicate with her in
But
public.
I do believe where we're headed is that more of that will come out in that sanctuary.
I agree. I totally agree.
And that's not, like, people don't know the years that I would go to the altar and get in front of the altar and lean down and pray. They could not see me.
Yeah.
They couldn't see my face to see how much snot and tears was coming out of it, because thank God I had the hair to cover it, you know? And they couldn't see that, or they couldn't see the sweat that I was producing, pressing to see something happen.
But it's not work at all, right?
No, but it's fun. It's like this. It's like this. If you have a job and you hate your job, the most menial task is the hardest.
Sure.
It's such work. You're wore out at the end of the day. But if you love what you're doing, you never consider it work, because you go home so fulfilled, excited. That's why I don't call it work.
Yeah, I agree. Well, if you have any questions, if anything comes up to your mind, you can comment below on the video, or you can always reach out to Patty. She's at patty@crosslifechurcheldo.com, Patty
Yes.
at crosslifechurcheldo.com, or she's on Facebook, and you can get her there, or if you know her, you can call her or call the church. Either way, but if you have any questions, like anytime you think of something you want to know, that's why we're here. We're here to equip you. So just reach out to us and let's